The early 20th century, coal miners worked and lived under horrendous conditions. These conditions led to labor movements in West Virginia. For example, in West Virginia, more coal miners died working in the mines than people who fought and died in the Spanish-American War. Everything was owned and run by a mining company. Commodities were bought and sold in company script. The stores sold items at inflated prices. And even one's house was owned by the company. Many other injustices happened in the mines. Very low wages, you were paid by the ton of coal, extremely long days, and unsafe working conditions. Thus, the miners began to organize.
I picked up my shovel and I walked to the mine. I loaded 16 tons, a number 9.
The United Mine Workers and the people of Matewan both showed a tremendous amount of leadership before, during, and after the Battle of 1920. The United Mine Workers exhibited leadership by organizing the workers into a union. Despite defeats later, the people of Matewan demonstrated leadership after the battle and inspired future worker rights. Before the Battle of Matewan, southern West Virginia, Logan, Mingo, and McDowell counties was not organized, while the rest of West Virginia was unionized and was experiencing better working conditions. Pay improved because of the demand for coal during World War I, but after the war, conditions worsened. In 1919, a year before the events of Matewan, there was outrage over the alleged murder and abuse of miners and their families, resulting in the March on Logan, a neighboring county. The United Mine Workers of America, a mine-working union, then moved into southern West Virginia to organize. Strong leadership was shown by the leaders of the United Mine Workers of America, especially Bill Blizzard, president of District 17. Blizzard first went to work in the mines at the age of 10 and became interested in union affairs while in his teens. Later, he became nationally known in the labor world as one of the principal organizers of the miners during the 1920s. They continued to organize even while being harassed by coal company operators. If there was any suspicion that you were an organizer, you would be arrested on a fraudulent charge, beaten, fired, and overall, you would be terrorized. In 1920, Matewan had a population of approximately 300, while Mingo County had a population of 26,000. In essence, the town was owned by the Stone Mountain Coal Company, including most of the houses and buildings. One instance of injustice, miners were elated to receive a pay raise, only to see the rent increase higher than their pay raise. Miners were forced to sign yellow dog contracts that banned union membership and required workers to endorse a denunciation of unions. In West Virginia, the mines were mined by white Appalachians, African Americans from the South, and many Southern Europeans, in Matewan in particular Italians. One of the unique things about Matewan and Southern West Virginia is people of different ethnicities organized together.
There were times in American history during the height of racism when people could find a way to look at, bringing folks together, that they would define a struggle not in terms of race but in terms of class, and fear of poor whites, of blacks. That's a problem that persists way after Matewan.
The miners were looking for a 27% pay increase, fair treatment in the form of free assembly, freedom to buy goods at any store, and the enforcement of safety laws. The evictions left miners and their families without a home, and their possessions were immediately thrown out into the street. All of the evicted miners were pro-union. Their families were forced to get out immediately and move to a tent village. Chief of Police Sid Hatfield was one of the major leaders of the miners in Matewan. When the miners were to be evicted or anything was to happen to them, he and the mayor, Cable Testerman, stood up for them and protected their rights and tried to stop the evictions in any legal way. He was also a member of the Hatfield clan, which has a decades-long feud with the McCoys. On May 19, 1920, an event happened that changed labor history forever. Strikebreakers from the Baldwin Felts Detective Agency entered the town. They came to evict pro-union workers from company-owned property. Chief of Police Sid Hatfield went to the detectives and confronted them. They then produced a warrant for his arrest, which the mayor said to be fraudulent. Sid Hatfield then produced a warrant for strikebreaker Albert Felts. Then a shot was fired by one of them, which has been claimed both ways. The miners had people hiding by the side. By the end, 10 people were dead, 3 miners and 7 strikebreakers. Sid Hatfield eventually became a folk hero for miners all over West Virginia. The UMWA created movies and had him visit striking workers in order to provide inspiration. He was indicted on charges that he was a conspirator in an incident in Welch, West Virginia. As he was walking up onto the McDowell County Courthouse steps on August 1st, 1921, he was shot while he was unarmed. He was shot by Baldwin Felts detective agents. His funeral was attended by 3,000 people, mostly pro-union miners and their families. There had been armed skirmishes between miners and coal operators, resulting in martial law. On August 31st, the largest armed insurrection in the United States since the Civil War began. The Battle of Blair Mountain was fought on one side by the Baldwin Felts detective agents, the West Virginia State Police, and the Logan County Sheriff's Department, and on the other side by striking miners and the United Mine Workers of America. The force of the miners was by some estimates more than 10,000 men. The men were the first rednecks because they wore red bandanas on their necks to distinguish each other. The Redneck Miner Army marched to and invaded Logan County at Blair Mountain, the border between non-unionized Logan and unionized Logan. The general of the army was Bill Blizzard. The encampments were bombed by airplanes. The fighting lasted 3 days and the miners were never able to reach the top of the mountain where the state police was. On September 2nd, federal troops arrived and the miners laid down their arms. Over 900 were arrested and tried for treason, conspiracy to commit murder, accessory to commit murder, and murder.
What happened in 1920 was the industrial side, who did not want unionization, they won the battle in 1920. But the pro-union ideal and philosophy, they won the war.
Union membership went down from 50,000 to 10,000 members after Blair Mountain and Matewan, but unions still draw inspiration from the people of Matewan today.
The unions, Matewan should be viewed as an inspiration, period.
Matewan did have a role in bringing national attention to the conditions of coal mines. Many articles appeared in newspapers like the New York Times. The national attention caused many changes, including the first hearing on Capitol Hill about conditions in the coal mines. It eventually led to New Deal laws in the 1930s that protected workers' rights, including the right to unionize.
Not immediately after Matewan, but it was a big impact on creating legislative change in the early 1930s. Basically, Matewan led to the National Industrial Recovery Act of 1933.
The legislation gave organizers certain rights.
We have legislation that occurs after Matewan, where for example, the ability of organizers to go into a site, there's federal protection for organizers to go onto a site. There's constant litigation by the owner of the property who wants to contest an organizer's right to come onto the site to organize. But the law is there, the federal law is there, and there's enough legal precedent that strengthens that. And
these events inspired a critically acclaimed movie called Matewan by director John Sayles. It told the story of the Battle of Matewan and the events and conditions that led to it. Director John Sayles said about Matewan, "When a colonized people learn they can fight back together, life can never again be so comfortable for their exploiters. And if people's deeds last beyond their lives, it is partly through the stories we tell about them."
Some people say a man is made out of mud. A poor man's made out of muscle and blood.